Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new League of Myths episode. This episode will be featuring the new and reworked Shen. I will also be making a League of Myths episode for Jin. So make sure to write down any myths you have for Jin down below in the comments section and maybe you'll see your name in the next episode. But as usual, don't forget to hit the like button if you end up enjoying this one, but let's jump right into it. Does Shen's W block the damage from towers, fountain, dragon or baron or rift herald, or things like a shackle box? So let's first get things out of the way and test whether or not the W will block enemy tower shots. And as I bring my Q over to myself, pop the W, you can see that the tower shot is not blocked. So definitely something you want to keep in mind. And then testing it with the tower fountain, but just for demonstrational purposes. Because let's be honest here, we all knew how this one would end up being. However, if we move over to the blue buff golem and I end up activating my W while getting attacked by all three of the monsters, all of their damage to myself is blocked thanks to the W during its duration. However, if I were to fight the dragon, the W from Shen's kit will not prevent the damage the dragon deals. Maybe because the damage the dragon deals is considered more of a spell rather than an auto attack. But next up we have Mini Baron, or in other words, the Rift Herald. And since this one does seem to attack with more or less its fists, it is considered a basic attack and Shen's W is able to block it. And based on everything we've seen so far, you would assume that Shen's W cannot block Baron, as it may or may not interact similar to how it did with Dragon. However, the opposite seems to happen and his W was in fact able to block Baron's attacks. And the final part of this myth is to test Shen's W with champion created objects, so in this case Shackle Box. And unfortunately for the defensive ninja, he is unable to block its damage with his W. Now moving on to the next myth, if Fiora parries Shen's Q, does she still get slowed or does Shen still get the buff? A fairly simple one to test. As I throw the Q through the Fiora, she parries it, she does not get slowed or get affected by it in any means whatsoever, but Shen still gets his buff where his auto attacks for the next 3 will deal bonus damage. Moving on, will Shen's W also block the damage taken by enemy minions, or will it be able to protect allied minions from damage? So let's first test it while taking damage from enemy minions. As they begin approaching me, you see that they do hit me for a bit of damage here and there, but the second I activate my W, all of that damage is instantly negated. However, if Shen were to try to offer the same courtesy to his own minions, well, unfortunately for them, it is not possible and the W has no effect on allied minions. Moving on to the next myth that will be covering a lot of questions. Can Shen's W block Ezreal, Yasuo, GP, or Nasus Q, or things like GP Barrel, or even Azir Soldier auto attacks? So let's first start things off with GP by only testing his Q. And as I activate my W and GP uses his Q, the damage is completely negated. However, if we then jump into testing it with his barrels instead, well, as I get into position and activate my W, the W has no effect on dodging the barrels, even though it is activated by his Q because it is a spell in itself. But next, let's test things out with Ezreal and his Q because it does act as an auto attack for him that procs on hit effects, and as you'd expect, it does block it. And when testing it with Yasuo's Q instead, well, this same thing is happening. The Q is completely negated. But what if we were to use Yasuo's third Q, the one that knocks up? Well, as you're about to see, it is still blocked by Shen's W, but the knock-up effect from Yasuo's Q is still applied. And then with things such as Nasus Q, well, as you I'm sure can guess by now, it is also blocked. And when testing this with Azir soldiers instead, well, I mean, this one is a little bit differently because the soldiers go right through the Shen W. Since they aren't really treated as an actual auto attack, it's still kind of a spell. But we also decided to test this with things like Vi W passive just to see how it may interact, but as long as Shen blocks the auto attack, the passive is not applied. However, if Shen were to get hit by something like a Vi E ability, he will block the damage for himself, but the AoE portion of Vi's E ability will still go off and hit any other potential targets. Now, somewhat going off of that test with Vi just now, will Shen's W prevent auto attacks from cancelling the recall animation? Now, this isn't really something Shen will be able to use for himself, but if an ally maybe beside him is trying to recall, and Shen sees an enemy opponent walking up to them to auto attack them in order to cancel the backing animation, well, Shen can throw the Q on them and pop his W and protect them from it. Because as you're about to see, as I'm recalling here, the Vi auto attacking me is not able to stop my backing animation. So a neat little trick that can be used in certain situations. The next question is asking, can Fiora proc her passive or her vitals on a target that is within Shen's W? So whether Shen uses this to help himself whenever going in for a trade, maybe if he's laning top lane against a Fiora, or maybe on an allied champion, well, you can see here, Fiora used her ultimate on Shen, and while Shen's W was active, Fiora was simply unable to proc the vital marks. Moving forward, will getting autoed under Shen's W beside an allied tower cause it to aggro on the enemy champion. So historically, if an enemy champion attacks you under your own tower, you can see there, the tower instantly aggroes to them. And interestingly enough, even if that auto attack technically doesn't do any damage, like you saw in this example right here, the tower will still aggro on them and attack them. Here's an interesting one. What's the interaction with Jax's E ability and Shen's W if both are allies? So Jax's E ability does more damage after you finally use the second part of it based on how many auto attacks you've dodged in the duration. But what if he's dodging auto attacks while standing inside Shen's W? Does he still get that bonus damage applied to his E? Well, we first test out to see how much damage his E ability does by itself, and on the Kog'Maw it actually did 80 damage. But now testing the myth itself, Shen activates W, Jax activates his E, and Kog'Maw attacks Jax 2 times. And this time Jax's E ability did 130 damage to the Kog'Maw rather than the 80 before. So it seems like Jax's own E ability definitely has precedence over standing within Shen's W. The next myth is fairly simple. Will Shen's Q follow him when he uses any form of dash, or does it go to the location at which Shen originally used or activated his Q? So here I'll also be using Thresh's Lantern just to increase the distance I'm moving in a short amount of time. The sword is quite far away from me as it is already, and the question is, will it go to where I go with the lantern, or is it gonna go to the location at which I pressed Q? And quite obviously the answer is the sword will follow you no matter where you dash as long as you keep going. But moving on to the next myth, will Thornmail still deal damage to a target hitting Shen within his own W? So the first thing we should definitely check out is how much damage will Thornmail do to Fiora right now under more or less normal circumstances. And you can see that damage number is 31 as magic damage. But if I were to now turn on my W and have Fiora auto attack me, will she still take the damage from Thornmail? And as it so happens in the video, the answer is actually no, she will not. The second last question is asking, does Windwall block the movement of Shen's Q? So of course, testing this one using Yasuo's Windwall, because it is the only Windwall in the game, I position my Q in such a way that it has to go through his Windwall, and not only does it stop the Q, but I also do not get the bonus attack speed and damage on my next 3 auto attacks. And the final myth of the episode, what happens if Shen ults someone while they're midair from Poppy Ultimate? So will Shen's ultimate have him appear at the target's original location? Will it have him appear wherever they are in the air, just on the ground instead? Or will it wait for the target to land at their location? And as you see in the video, it does not wait, and it puts Shen on the ground at whichever the location the ultimate finished channeling while the champion is in the air. Alright guys, that is it for this episode of the League of Myths series featuring the reworked Shen. If you did enjoy, definitely hit the like button, make sure to subscribe if you haven't, check out the other episodes as well, and make sure to write down any Jhin myths below in the comments section, and maybe you'll see your name in the next episode. But I thank each and every one of you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace.